I am joined by legendary commentator. You may have seen the voice of the UFC for many years, Bellator MMA, currently one of the voices for BYB Extreme. None other than Goldie himself, Mike Goldberg. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Eddie. Happy New Year to you. I've always wanted to gauge that, and every year I get confused. Is it like to the 4th, to the 6th, to the 11th, or is it the first time you see someone? But what if you haven't seen someone until April? Do you
Ooh,
still say Happy New Year? I think we're still in that zone of Happy New Year, though,
it's definitely permissible.
bud.
Yeah, that's fair. But that
Yeah,
you raise a good point. I think that studies should be done. When
I
is
think
the
you're right.
cutoff?
I'm
Mhm.
surprised with everything going on in this world, 2024 time, that studies have not been done on that yet. Maybe that's
True.
your and my side business. We'll have to talk offline about it.
Love it, man. But you're doing big things. You're currently you got BYB coming up
Yep.
the 18th of this month, which is a Thursday card. It's bare knuckle, which is pretty unique, and they have the trigon, which is it's a triangle. I've never
Yes.
seen a triangle. How did you link up? Like when you get new gigs, are you like your own agent or do you outsource it to someone else, or how do you get gigs?
It's a combination of a lot of things. I mean, back in the olden days, you would do a resume tape and you would make sure you typed the label properly. I'm just pulling up our fight card so I can intelligently represent myself. That was based on, a fighter having to intelligently defend themselves. Um, it used to be back in the day, you would send a tape. I remember being a very poor college graduate, and you had to send these three-quarter tapes back then, Eddie, and you had to make sure the label was right. Because if you spell the news director's name wrong, that tape, they don't even put that tape in the machine, and
Mhm.
justifiably so. But I was going broke $7 at a pop, and then finally got a gig. But nowadays, I was very fortunate. I've got a long-standing relationship with our Hall of Fame matchmaker Mel Valenzuela, and the minute that Bellator moved to Showtime, and Mauro Ranallo was already full time at Showtime, I lost my Bellator gig only because of a network change, and it was disappointing, to say the least, because I enjoyed all the people at Bellator. I love MMA. Big John McCarthy, my broadcast
Sure,
partner.
sure, sure.
But they say it all the time. Everything happens for a reason.
Indeed.
Mike Vasquez, our owner, asked Mel, "Hey, would Goldie want to fly down to an event? I'll fly him down. Love to just meet him." And that's how BYB began. And I'll tell you, Eddie, when I looked and did a little homework on BYB, there were a couple of early shows where Al Bernstein was part of the commentary team. And I have huge respect, obviously, for Al Bernstein, his boxing knowledge, his tenure. He's a legend, he's a Hall of Famer. And I'm like, all right, these guys are taking it seriously. If they're bringing Al in, that's a big statement. I come into, it was in Miami, it was down at the County Fair Center. I walk in, I see Paulie Malignaggi. I'd never met Paulie before, but we met a million times, just, kind of in the business. And I was like, oh, holy shit, they just took serious to another level.
Mhm.
And so I saw that Paulie was involved. And then I hit it off with Mike and the crew. And, my next show was the next show. And we've just continued to grow from there. And it's been fun being part of the journey. But for that, it was Mel Valenzuela saying, Goldie, I got a gig for you. They
Same.
just want to meet you. Don't be yourself. And you'll probably have an opportunity to get the gig. And so
Cool.
this was a great opportunity, and it's really grown, and it's been a ton of fun being on this journey. One, I would say, similar to back in the days of the UFC and MMA's acceptance. It's cool to be on this journey. I absolutely love working with the Magic Man, not just on BYB, but on Pro Box TV as well.
Were you surprised that Bellator sold?
Um, Not if you look at it as Bellator. I was surprised because of Bellator, because the product is outstanding. But it's owned by Viacom, and Viacom is a big machine that's been losing a lot of money. And I mean, look at all the layoffs recently, for example, at ESPN, owned by Disney. And so, in the big spectrum of things, Eddie, with Viacom, that move with Bellator did not surprise me um, a lot. Now, if you would have said Bellator was still owned by Scott Coker, like back in the days of Strikeforce, I would say, wait, they got great fighters. They're fine. They just need a perfect platform. and they can continue to roll and put on some great shows. But
Mhm.
it being part of the bigger picture, which was also the reason for the move with Showtime Boxing, is Viacom being more of that cog in a corporate wheel. That part did not surprise me, but I am excited to see the PFL and Bellator as one now. And will it be as one? Will it be one and the other? And then we'll have these super fights. I know one thing, everybody's extremely excited about it. And I'm happy for all of my friends at Bellator who will make the move, and especially for the fighters who are going to get some marquee matchups, even more so than they were able to get under the Bellator flag.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been following the sport since I can remember. And if it's one thing I'm sure of, it's that Scott Coker is going to pop up with a new awesome promotion just any second now. Like it seems to be it's happened before. What do you think will be next for Scott?
I'll tell you what, he's the man. We stay in touch all the time. Um, Ironically, he was texting me when my Bengals beat his Niners many weeks ago, and that was with Joe Burrow. Now the Bengals have officially been eliminated, so football has been eliminated to my mind, especially the college game with that school up north being a Buckeye. Go Huskies, go UW. Um, it'll be interesting. Scott can retire if he would like to. And that's a testimony to everything he has done as a businessman, but more so his love and passion for the fight game and the opportunities he's given dozens and dozens of not just fighters, but staff and production and you name it. He's done it all. And he was going to hang it up after the Strikeforce sale to Zuffa in his time at the UFC. And back in the day, Kevin Kay was the general manager. He was basically the vice president of Spike. He was very high up on the food chain at Viacom, a guy I worked closely with when the UFC was on Spike. And they had lunch, and Kevin and Scott hit it off. And then Scott said, all right, if we're going to do this Bellator thing, let's do it right. I would say, I think it would simplify unfairly to Scott to just say everything he touches turns to gold. Although everything he touches turns to gold, but that is because of his work ethic, his passion, his ability to get a great team and a great family around him. Scott's got his 49ers season tickets. He's courtside for his Warriors. He did give up his Sharks season tickets. And as a Sharks fan myself, I can't say I blame him. Hopefully he'll get them back when the Sharks get good again. So whatever Scott does, he's earned. But if Scott dips his toe in the water again, watch for whatever, pool that he dips his toe into to be one that is on the radar very prominently, very quickly. He's one of the people out there in this business that I admire more than anyone, or as much as anyone, Eddie. And I'm very honored to call him my friend. He's good people, plain and simple.
As soon as I heard that the deal officially went through, my very first thought was, what's Scott's next promotion going to be? It wasn't, oh, who's going to fight who and all that. Like, sure, that's secondary. But for me, as a little hardcore fight nerd, it's what's Scott going to do next? And if he retires, good on him. He's earned it.
Hey,
for sure.
He has earned it. And, one of my thoughts was, what's Scott going to do? And then another thought was, okay, George Greenberg, who was my mentor at Fox and my TV hero as an executive, has been running the production for the PFL for many, many years. And now they're going to have all these shows and you know what I'm getting at. But we're going to focus on BYB. We're going to focus on Pro Box. And if other gigs come my way because of the move, it would just be great to be reunited with my friends and perhaps have a chance to work with John again. But I'll tell you, and Eddie, I'm sure you operate the same way. When you're going through, a transition, if you will. And I mean, I did nothing wrong at Bellator, yet all of a sudden Bellator was gone.
Mm-hmm.
And for Mike Vasquez to reach out and to accept me in his family and to treat me the way he has treated me since day one, BYB is my bloodline. BYB is my DNA. And I want to be part of the reason. There's many parts and there's many pieces that BYB takes over. It's like Connor said years ago, don't want to take part, we're one to take over. And I believe we're really set up to do that as we begin 2024. So my commitment to Mike Vasquez and my BYB family is as deep as it gets. So nothing will ever be a conflict for a BYB event. Paulie and I'll be right there, getting blood all over us in the Trigon. It's the greatest. Now I just wear my black suit. It's a lot safer that way.
And they're doing Thursday shows, right? So that's
we're mixing
pretty
it up. And
convenient.
I think we might, Eddie, look to do a Thursday more often. We've got some Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays on the schedule right now. We're on beIN Sports, and so a lot of it happens to do with, you know, syncing up with your primary broadcast carrier or streamer in this day and age. A lot of it has to do with the venue. But at ProBox TV, we went to Wednesday night fights, and we did it on purpose because we have an A side and another A side at ProBox TV. And why go up against Fridays and Saturdays and why not go back to the olden days of Marv Albert and the Fight Doctor, Ferdy Perchenko, and make it a Wednesday night staple for ProBox. So if BYB becomes your Thursday night staple, your Thursday night place to go for bare knuckle, then let's establish that. And let's get our niche and let's bury our feet in cement on those Thursday nights and let everybody know that we promise action once or twice, you know, a Thursday every single month, and bring as many great fights as we can.
And again, being the fight nerd, the more live events we can have during the week, sign me up.
There's no question about it. And now I like I said to you before, I mean, my Bengals are done. My Sharks aren't very good. My Buckeyes were not a powerhouse in the bowl game. And so I got a long wait before the first preseason game for a healthy Joe Burrow. So yeah, bring on fights 24/7, 365. I'm ready to work.
I love it. So as far as commentating goes, I think it might be like the most difficult job that most people think is easy. So before the pandemic hit, I was commentating the local fights here in Virginia.
Yep.
And, you know, often I would bring in one of the champions or number one contenders and have them sit in for a match and commentate someone they might be facing here,
Right.
you know, soon. And 9 out of 10 times the guys would freeze up. They would get awkward. They would talk in these weird voices that wasn't them. And like I couldn't understand what was going on. I was like, you fight in front of people, yet you get on a microphone and you freeze and you pause and you're like, you're scared. And people just aren't prepared for speaking in public. So can you just speak to just how difficult it is, although it might not seem that way?
That's great insight right there, and it's greatly appreciated. I will tell you, Eddie, the greatest compliment that Joe Rogan ever paid me during our 19 years together is he said, and I quote, he said, "People do not understand how good Goldie is, how great Goldie is." And this is Joe. This is not me patting myself on the back. He said, because people don't realize the chaos going on in his headset from the truck and the changes in this feature was dropped and that weigh-in that walk-in, we got to wait on a second because somebody tripped in backstage. So we've got to fill, and you got to hit that 3, 2, 1 and all the combo features. Going to break. Coming up next, Eddie and Goldie in the Trigon. Like you've got to hit those. To me, that's the enjoyable part. And I've always said that my job as a play-by-play guy is very similar to being a quarterback in the NFL. And when it's most enjoyable is when the playbook goes out the window, which is often the case because it's live TV and I've got to dodge those bullets and I've got to make sure I don't run into those potholes and make it much, and I appreciate the compliment, make it much, to your point, seamless. And that's my job, is to make it seamless. It's also my job to make my partner as comfortable and great as they can be. It's been a while since I kind of like worked with somebody breaking in, but when I would, much like you were talking about, if a fighter would come in and be there for their first time, the thing, and you may do this the next time, Eddie, I would tell them, hey, just remember one thing. You have forgotten more about fighting and more about these disciplines than 95% of the people who are watching tonight. So don't try to fool them. You have the knowledge. It's in there. Enjoy the fight. Pretend you're sitting with Eddie the corner of a bar. That's people said that about, Rogan and I. People say that about Paulie and I. Just be yourself. Just talk about the fights, talk about what you see, and don't try to be Troy Aikman on your first try on television. And I'm my absolute prep freak. I'm OCD to the I don't even know what level. I don't think there is a level that anybody else could obtain. But I learned that from Bill Clement when I went to ESPN to do hockey in the mid-90s. He said, Goldie, it's all about preparation. And I already had a pretty darn good work ethic with preparation. He said, when you feel like you're all prepped, do another half hour. If it's looking at another bio, watching a tape, reading a couple more articles. And then he said, push it to the side. Because after that, it's just going to become minutia and you're going to confuse yourself. But you don't have to fake it in life when you've done your homework. And so that's what I bring to the table, is that I understand what I need to do to be prepared, to be comfortable when I put on the headset. Now, does that mean I'm not going to make mistakes? Of course not. I'm a human being. Does that mean people on Twitter aren't going to continue to tell me how horrible I am? Of course they are. Of course they are. Opinions are like, and they all smell. But I know that I go in there to represent the fighters and to entertain the fans, and obviously to share what the promotion I'm working for is doing in the combat world, as we are with the Trigon, the smallest surface in combat sports, with the matchups that we're putting on, with the schedule in which we're planning for 2024. I always said it's the F&F. It's for the fighters and it's for the fans. And at the end of the day, if Paulie and I are having fun, people at home are going to sit back and go, man, that fight wasn't that bad. Paulie and Goldie were laughing the whole time. Well, we're probably laughing about something else because the fight is a dog. Now, you don't get many fights in BYB that don't deliver in that small service with no gloves on. But that's always been my philosophy, Eddie. And I appreciate you asking the question, but it's also my passion. It's why I always enjoyed the studio in quarterbacking a pregame show, but it's why play-by-play is my passion. Play-by-play is the greatest high that I'll ever have in my life. And when a show goes a little bit off the tracks, that's when I'm probably enjoying myself the most, because I'm able to wheel it back and put it in the right place before it crashes.
I love it. I love it. It's I've always been a fan of the saying, over prepare and then just go with the flow.
Amen.
I heard that one day and I was like, oh, that's it.
You know what? If you leave some on the table, that's perfect. Prepare. You could be talking about, let's say back in the MMA days, somebody's takedown defense, and there's not a single takedown that is scored in the fight. Well, takedown defense is still a story because his opponent didn't even shoot. He didn't even try. But I might mention it once, because what now the focus is these two men or women battling on their feet. And so, have it all there, but don't force it. You have to remember that a sporting event, a live sporting event, is a book being written in front of our eyes. And so while you may have already put the cliff notes next to you, the cliff notes may not be the exact version of the book that is writing itself as we watch a fight progress. And that's what it's all about. And I love what you said, over prepare and then just have fun, basically, right?
Yeah, go with the flow.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I like to roll with it. Man. And like how you said, people might take to Twitter and they'll talk their shit or whatever. But like for every one of those, there's two fight nerds that absolutely appreciate even the harmless little hiccups, like the little mistakes, or maybe not even mistakes, just, for example, remember the whole Travis Lutter is the Michael Jordan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That is iconic at this moment.
It is. And here's the funny part about that. So before every fight, I would meet with Joe Silva when he was still the matchmaker at the UFC, and Sean Shelby. And we're going through the fights, we're breaking it down. And what Joe told me later, as he smacked me upside the head, is he said, not everyone can be the Michael Jordan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. While I was doing all my prep and listening to Joe, I thought he said that Travis Lutter was like the Michael Jordan of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And I threw
Mhm.
it out there, and Joe just like, boom, he just gave me the kidney shot. And then I go, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant. And once I don't even know if Joe's really watched a lot of Michael Jordan. As you know, he always talks about not caring about any other sport. But that was one that I actually just heard wrong from our matchmaker, but one that's always talked about. And
People love it though. Like,
it's what it's about. If you can't have
dude,
fun, and if you can't make fun of yourself, Eddie, then you should probably do something else.
100%.
And so when
So
people say you got a 20-minute gag reel of all your mistakes, I would say, well, I probably have spoken 20 million words of sports commentary over the past 3 decades. So if I were in, the major leagues, I'd be making about $800 trillion a year with a
right,
batting average like that. So
right,
I'll take the gag reels. I'll take the gag
100%.
reels,
Well,
and
what's
precision is precise is actually pretty accepted now.
yeah,
It wasn't
100%.
insightful at the time. I couldn't come up with a word, but now to say that so far your interview with me, your precision is precise, almost sounds like it makes sense.
I love it. I absolutely love it. So Travis Luter's son, his name is Jordan.
No.
I'm not even fucking with you. Listen, he just made his MMA debut in October, won with a rear naked choke in the first round. Jordan Luter. The prophecy is being fulfilled, my guy.
I'm telling you. And like I said, Travis Luter will someday have a son named Jordan. It might not be Michael Jordan, but that Jordan will be outstanding.
No, I
That's
love it,
awesome.
man. I love
That's
it.
awesome. And Chris Brennan, when I was in Bellator, his son Luke is a stud. Both his boys are studs. And to see the West Side Strangler and have him talk about our times together and how much he appreciated how I represented him and his storyline so well over his many years in combat. I called so many of his fights in the UFC. It's cool to see the next generation, but I love that. Yeah, that's what I was talking about, people. That Travis Luter loves Michael Jordan so much that someday he will have a kid named Jordan.
But
That's
like
pretty awesome.
the fight fans really do appreciate it. Even like the little hiccups, you can call them mistakes or whatever, but we definitely appreciate them. Even
I appreciate
I
it.
remember Matt Wyman had a fight coming up, and you said or
Wet Myman.
Matt Wyman, and like now that's a term of endearment between like friends. I'm not even kidding. It's just it's a term of endearment now. You've made your mark on combat sports.
And I want to know what the heck a prodigy is. Because I mean, it was, and then I tried to say it again. Joe's looking at me. Okay, BJ Penn is one of my favorite fighters, also still one of my closest friends. I know the prodigy, why he was the prodigy for a second that night, and why all of a sudden I couldn't say prodigy, I have no idea. So I'm pretty sure after I got through that stand up and Joe going, making fun of me as it happened, I probably just went Baby J the rest of that fight.
Sure.
But prodigy, I got it back. I got it now. And hey, you know what? Maybe BJ will have a family member or a son or even a daughter who he will say, because of my friend Goldie, I'm going to have my son, who's an outstanding fighter, be the prodigy instead of the prodigy.
Man.
Just like Travis Luter has a kid named Jordan.
You got to have fun with it, man. I definitely
right.
appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
And the people who want to hate on it, what are they doing, right?
Exactly. And you know what? It's sad that social media has become toxic like that. When we were in the early days, Eddie, I would take time away from my time with my children, my family time, and I would hit everybody who would say anything on Twitter back, because early on it was like, okay, I'm going to say something like Goldie, I love your work, whatever it is. And I would hit him back. So let's say I hit you back and you would be like, holy shit, Mike Goldberg, again, me being humble, but Mike Goldberg just responded to my tweet. Mm-hmm. And I enjoyed having that interaction. And I enjoyed telling each and every fan how much I appreciated their support. And then it became toxic. And then I stepped away from it. But the early part was like a way to connect with people that you only see on your TV in your living room, or you only hear for some people in a different, like on the, whatever it was, an act or what. And it was great at first. And then it got toxic. And then people started with the fake accounts with 2 followers, and my kids should no longer be on this earth. I'll keep it clean, and just dumb shit,
Right.
just really dumb, disrespectful stuff
Gross.
to anybody. And at that point, I used to fire back a little bit more, a fuck you here and there. And then I just was like, you know what? It's not worth my time. I remember one night, you'll appreciate this. It was after UFC in Vegas, and I had a couple cocktails. Go back to the room about 2 in the morning, and I start replying to some of those very kind and intelligent people on social media. And my daughter at the time was probably 15 years old, Eddie. And I get this call. She's, Dad, what are you doing? I'm like, what? She goes, is your password still the same on Twitter? I'm like, yes, it is, Kiara. She like, good, go to bed. I'm like, okay, first of all, I'm being scolded by my 15-year-old daughter. Secondly, she's right. And thirdly, she went and deleted like 24 dumb shit replies that I had on my account. She just went, delete, 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 and saved me that night, saved me from myself.
Sure.
But it was, when your 15-year-old daughter's like, Dad, what are you doing? You kind of go, I need to reassess this whole social media thing.
Sure.
But now it's fun. Now it's fun. And it's a way for us as a promotion at BYB to get our fighters' personalities out there, to promote our upcoming events. And I'll go back to the UFC, Eddie. I don't think before that anybody was so good at utilizing all the elements of social media, which was free advertising, as the UFC was. Because back in the early days, we didn't have all the big sponsors, and we were waiting for the right network contract. We had the pay-per-views, but we didn't have any over-the-air stuff until 2005 with The Ultimate Fighter. But the use of social media, and it still continues to be outstanding with the UFC and many other promotions, BYB included, that's a way to connect with people and let them hear what Ike Villanueva wants to say, or what Rene Rodriguez is saying as he comes back. And he's one of the guys who, was an original backyard brawler with Dada 5000. And, white boy Rene Rodriguez will fight, when we are in Miami in a couple of weeks, or Jerome Hatch and Marco Martignac with the trilogy fight, which is going to be outstanding. It's a way for those guys to promote themselves, but also for us to get out there and promote the great fights and the great fighters and the great people that really leave it all on the line when they step through that cage door.
I got one more question for you. For those who have never seen any kind of bare knuckle anything, maybe, and predominantly UFC fans or maybe strictly boxing fans, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from attending a BYB event, aside from it being bare knuckle, aside from the Trigon, just the experience itself? In which way, how is it different from a typical MMA show or a standard boxing show?
Everybody loves the home run hitter, right? Everybody loves the wide receiver. I'm going to go with my boy Jamar Chase, because that's 7-Eleven, baby. Everybody loves a home run hitter. So who doesn't love a knockout? Who doesn't love a definitive finish? And that's what you experience in BYB. A, it's the bare knuckle battle. B, it's the smallest surface in combat sports, 21 by 21 by 21. So there's nowhere to go. Now, the C and the D, which are very important, it's not tough man. These are very well-trained boxers, mixed martial artists, Muay Thai practitioners, you name it. They're strikers who have skills now. That this sport has evolved. And it is the oldest form of boxing and combat sports. They didn't have gloves when John L. Sullivan was fighting in Mississippi for 4 hours, in 102-degree temperature. So it goes back to the roots of boxing. So I will tell you this, as much as everybody knows jiu-jitsu now, as much as we know that the wrestlers are still going to be the dominant fighters in a mixed martial arts matchup, because you either take your opponent down or you do what Chuck did, you sprawl and brawl and you don't get taken down and you force them to stand. Those are elements that will never change. That said, 75% of the people in attendance or watching on TV, when a fight goes to the ground, they still boo. There's still some kind of disappointment. And I'm not taking anything away from jiu-jitsu or wrestling or the ground game. It's just the human nature. They want to see people stand and trade. That's what you get with BYB. That's what you get with bare knuckle fighting. Now, with gloves, you can protect yourself a lot more. You've got the guard, obviously, but the gloves were designed to protect the hands, not your opponent's head. So you don't have this for 12 rounds. And so it seems worse, but it's safer. And it's the thing that we talked about, in you being a fan, Eddie, you remember in MMA, we had to educate the world that this is actually safer because you're not taking those constant blows to your head because the gloves are like concrete. So, and there's nowhere to move around either, like there is in a boxing ring where you can be a runner, you can be a counter puncher, you can just jab, jab, jab and not engage. You don't have a choice but to engage. So when you walk into a BYB event, be ready to be impressed with the athleticism, the toughness. I mean, just the pure heart, skill, grit of these fighters. And I get to say it's all over if we have 10 fights, 8 or 9 times a night, you know? And instead of inside the octagon, it's inside the trigon. And then you have guys, a couple of perfect examples, both names that you know very well. Joey Beltran has been outstanding in bare knuckle. And I remember seeing Joey, and I called, you know, the Executioners fights in the UFC. He's like, Goldie, I don't have to worry about leg kicks. I don't have to sprawl. I don't have to worry about getting choked out. Sign me up. I was like knocking on the door. And now Ike Villanueva comes in, and he's going to fight next month for the heavyweight championship against our present belt holder, DJ Linderman. And Ike made an interesting comment because he made it to the UFC, but he didn't have a stellar UFC run. But I remember him telling us in a fighter meeting, I did it my way. So in other words, he didn't go to the wrestling. He didn't play the game. He went out and he tried to knock people out. And if he got taken down, it's okay. It wasn't okay that he lost, but it was okay because he said, Goldie, I did it my way. And now my way is the way in BYB and in bare knuckle. And his knockout in our last show was just nasty as you've ever seen. And so a lot of these fighters, Eddie, they actually enjoy the freedom of, you know, the shin on that IT band or the teep right inside your rib cage or the elbows, although the punches still hurt. There's a lot more, there's blood, but I've also said that MMA has already kind of taken society and given it a different perspective and understanding of blood, that the cut maybe it's nasty. It's going to need a zipper. I mean, it's going to need stitches, but it's not as bad as one would think. It's just all the adrenaline and everything going on. And so you see a lot of bleeding, especially skin on skin. Well, you see that with MMA gloves. You see that with a sharp elbow. I mean, how many times Kenny Florian opened somebody up with those razor blade elbows? I mean, I remember Kenny told me one time when he fought Shirk, you know, he was on the bottom the whole time, but he caught, you know, Sean Shirk from the bottom with an elbow. He said, Goldie, I taste like the taste of iron was in my mouth for a week. And I'm like, so much blood was pouring down though. So prepare to be entertained, prepare to see true fights. There's not going to be any that you go, wow, well, that's 15 minutes of my life I'll never get back. You won't see that in BYB. And it's fun to see successful boxers make their way to take the gloves off. A guy like Tommy Turner, very successful boxer. He's like, I feel free. I don't have these. I feel free. Like this is great. Probably until he breaks his hand, but still, it's great. And then for the MMA guys and the Muay Thai guys, we allow a lot of dirty boxing. Dirty boxing is different in bare knuckle than it is in glove boxing. Glove boxing, you and I get in here and we get pushed apart. Here we're working in the clinch. Now it's not knees, it's not elbows.
Sure.
You see a lot of guys with the boom, 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 boom. And that part of it is unique as well. So it's action-packed. I mean, you bring a guy like Yuli Diaz, the monster, in to the Trigon on our next card in Miami. You're talking about a guy who was extremely successful in his boxing days, has done it all. And now he just wants to let his hands fly. And I would not want to be the first guy signing up to fight Yuli Diaz. And so it's great to
Yeah.
see those who have come over, and they all absolutely love it. They enjoy it. I'm sure Luke Rockhold didn't enjoy his trip to the dentist, but they all love it. They all love it, and I don't mean that bad. Luke's
Sure.
an amazing dude. Any man or woman who gets inside a cage and goes into combat like these people do.
Sure. All the respect.
If you don't take the hat off to them, or get in there yourself, then
Well,
you're one of
Goldie,
those guys
my
on
hat
Twitter.
is off to you. I got to thank you so much for taking out the
Thank you.
time to join me. You truly are a legend of the game. You have
Thanks,
made
Ed.
your mark on combat sports, and I cannot wait to hear you commentate